Hi there. Today I'm going to talk about the ER doctors in California. People are sharing on YouTube. I've had a few friends ask me my opinion on it. The video I reviewed is 51 minutes long. The YouTube channel is called 23 ABC News KERO. The title of the video is Dr. Erickson Covid-19 Briefing. It's dated April 22nd, 2020. I don't question these guys' qualifications. I don't question Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci's qualifications. I don't pretend to know any more about these topics than they do. But what I can do is listen to what they're saying, try to understand what they're saying, figure out what that means to me, and in this case, what Dr. Erickson is saying versus what Fauci and Birx are saying. My purpose is not to try to be an expert in this subject matter, but to show you how you can hear technical information, understand it, and know how to apply it. They offer a lot of good information, good things to think about. Not treating the other illnesses, the hospitals being shut down, big problem. The economic side of this is a huge problem. I appreciate them bringing in the mental health piece, the addictions and the abuses and things. That there's also heart diseases, things like that. So that's a really good point. What I'm going to take issue with is how they seem to either not understand or not want to understand what the White House task force has been saying, and certainly not the models. Some of the things he's saying in this video can mislead people. The initial models were woefully inaccurate. That's not true. And he reasserts this throughout, that the models. There's a huge misunderstanding about the role the models play, and people aren't really interpreting the models correctly. Based on that repeated assertion, I'm not convinced Dr. Erickson has seen the key press briefings when they presented the models. I recommend he and anyone who wants to know if what Fauci and Birx had predicted and were recommending, you go back and watch those press briefings. March 31st is a very key press briefing. That was the one where we extended to the end of April, the stay at home. They explain their decision making, they explain the science, and they present the models. I posted a video called Fauci and Birx Were Not Wrong on April 13th. You could watch my video, it's about 20 minutes long. You could also watch the press briefing. As far as the models go, I did a video on April 11th called Revelation, the IHME model was not wrong. Here's kind of my issue with this. He talks about following the science and following the numbers, but I don't believe that he's doing it. In order to follow the science, you have to properly represent what the models were saying and what Dr. Fauci and Birx. They say we did the right thing in the beginning, but we didn't have any data. All we had were these models that were completely wrong. That's not true. Dr. Birx has said that in the beginning, the numbers coming out of China did not concern them. Huge 10 million city population, 60 million province, 50,000 infections. To them, that was not a serious, highly infectious disease. Everything changed when it came to Europe and they saw what was happening in Italy. The decision-making, the problem-solving was caused by what was happening in Italy and the rest of Europe. Models were not telling us what to do. Models were not telling us what was going on. The scientists were seeing what was happening in Italy and the rest of Europe, which was hospitals overwhelmed, people sick and dying, and nobody can treat them. We see this happening real life. This was not a projection. This was not a model forecast. This was real life science, real life observable phenomenon data happening. When you look at that and you say, this thing seemed to spread so quickly in Italy that it just got out of hand and the healthcare system is over capacity and people can't be treated, which means people with heart attacks can't get in the hospital. If you need an ambulance, you can't get an ambulance because 50 people called the ambulance because they have family members that can't breathe because of the COVID. So that's the situation that was unfolding in Italy, real time, real life. What happens if that comes to America? Imagine for yourself, nationwide in the United States of America, that happening. People in charge, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx most prominently, were said, this is a problem. We need to make sure this doesn't happen in the United States. We have a responsibility. The president, the Congress, our elected officials, everyone has a responsibility to make sure this does not happen in the United States. What are we going to do about it? What are your plans? Here's the problem. We didn't have any testing. There was bureaucracy, there was mistakes in the CDC, but we had no testing. We have no way of knowing how many people in the United States were infected. Think about that. They knew the disease would be dormant. People would be infected for a week to 2 weeks before they would even show symptoms. A large percentage, 20%-ish at the time, could be asymptomatic, meaning they're carrying the disease, they're infected, they're spreading the disease, but they don't get sick at all, ever. Nothing. Another percentage would have very mild disease. So you have people walking around, flying around the country. We're a very mobile country, right? We're first world. We have people flying between cities all the time. We have people in large venues doing business. And we have no idea how many people are out there right now walking around with this disease that just shut down the hospitals in Italy. What can we do? We now know from Fauci and Birx, there's two things: containment and mitigation. You don't have a vaccine. Containment, mitigation. Too late for containment. We don't even know where it is. We started to see pop up in California and Washington and then in New York. The only response was to mitigate. Mitigate meaning keep people separate. If you vaccinate, the virus can't spread. If you keep people separate, the virus can't spread. So in lieu of vaccination, the only way to stop this problem from happening, this overwhelming of the hospital and people dying in the streets and in the parking lots, was through mitigation. That was the decision making that we had. Here was another problem. How do we equip our hospitals? Because again, we don't know how many people are infected. We don't know how bad this is going to get. So what do? You calculate. This doctor talked about, we have our data and we extrapolate that data. Well, we had data in China, we had data from Europe, and we extrapolated that. That's a model. Extrapolation is a model. Taking the infections versus deaths and things that we have now and extrapolating, there's a lot fewer variables in something like an infectious disease model, but there's still a lot of variables. Even this extrapolation isn't very accurate. My point being, when you see a problem out there like this, it's your job. What's happening in Italy, we have to stop it from happening here in the United States. Your job. What do? You need some tools, right? You say, well, I know we have a problem. I know we have to mitigate. I know we have to shut down. But we need to somehow measure this problem. We need to put some metrics in place. We need to make some estimates. If you were planning a trip across country in your car, you would do that. You would make some estimates. You would figure out how many times you have to stop for gas and how long it's going to take you to travel in a day. So that's a model. When you plan anything out like that, there's a lot of variables that you don't know, but you plan it anyway. In a cross-country road trip, if you've experienced unexpected delays due to traffic or extra bathroom breaks or something like that, it's within your power to make adjustments to try to make up that time. But that's a model too. I guess my biggest concern is when people are saying this, they're saying models are wrong. Stop using model. You can't stop using models. We will always use models. Tracking a spread of an infectious disease is a very complex system. A computer gives us the ability, instead of a couple of calculations on the back of an envelope like this doctor has done, a computer model can do a lot of different calculations all at once. So that's really what it's doing. It's taking what we know and calculating it. So that's what happened. And that's what models are. For a doctor to sit here and say, are we following science? I have to ask, when he misrepresents the models and he misrepresents the situation, is he following science? I don't think he is. If he's following the news and what the news was reporting from March 31st relative to what Fauci and Birx are saying and the models, then he's totally misinformed. He has no idea what's going on. That's why I did those videos. You have to watch those press conferences, or at least watch my videos to see what's going on. Another element that I believe Dr. Erickson is inserting here, he says right away, we're going to bring this to you from an entrepreneur and an ER position. So he's definitely worried, and if you listen, a lot of the language is about the financial condition of the hospitals and things like that. On the White House task force, Trump would be more like the entrepreneur. Fauci and Birx would be the pure scientists. So this gentleman brings both of those to bear. So part of the issue here is he's worried about his financial interests, and rightly so, the financial interests of the entire hospital system and the entire economy. Again, very valid concerns. But when you're doing science and you're saying, here's data and here's numbers and here's what they mean, you can't let that influence you. That helps you decide what to do about it when you get into risk management as far as going back to work versus staying locked down. You could minimize the risk of infections by staying locked down forever. But that's not practical. That's not real. So we have to go to work, and we are going to go back to work. And the White House team of Fauci and Birx presented that plan. We're assuming more risk by going back to work, but that's necessary because of the damage we're doing to the economy and everything else. So it is both. It's not one or the other. All I'm saying is, if you're going to present data and tell me what that data means, you have to separate out that economic component. You have to take the entrepreneurial thinking out of it and only look at the data. So we say, here's the data. Here's what the data seems to mean to us. And then when you go, now what do we do about that? That's when you bring in the entrepreneur, the economist, the things like that. But don't present data saying, are we following the science? And we just have real data. This is the real data, and extrapolate it out. And then at the same time, allow your entrepreneurial bias to skew what you're telling us that data means. That's all I'm saying. And I believe that's happening here. I'm very impressed by the questions from the press, from the media in this video. They are outstanding. Whoever these reporters are, they should be in the White House. I'm telling you, these guys, if those were the kind of questions being asked of the White House task force, and then stories written using the answers, we would have a much better informed public, including Dr. Erickson here. These questions from the press were outstanding. I have to tell you, just listen to these questions. They're not accusatory. They're not political. They're only trying to understand. Yes, they say, you said this over here, but how do you reconcile that with what's being said over here? Those are scientific questions. They really are. They're not trying to catch somebody to write a juicy headline. They're challenging the thinking, and they're trying to reconcile different information that they've received. So very, very good questions. The questions begin at the 8-minute mark, and there's a reveal. There's a good reveal at 8 minutes. Dr. Erickson was citing the models being woefully inaccurate based on predicting 1 million deaths, and none of that's happening. The reporter accurately corrected him and said, well, the 1 million projection was based on no mitigation. We've done mitigation, so that scenario is gone. We cannot use that number. The numbers with mitigation were much lower, and those are the numbers you have to go to. And Dr. Erickson said some models had it in the hundreds of thousands, but that didn't happen either. Not some models, okay? The models. The numbers put out by the White House had a range of 100,000 to 240,000, something like that, with mitigation. We did mitigation. There's no 1 million deaths. Nobody was predicting millions of deaths any longer. That only was a scenario if the country did not lock down. There was a factor of 10 improvement. He dismissed that question saying, well, some models. No, not some models, all models. And then he said, we haven't hit that. Well, right now we're at 50,000. The low end of the projection was 100. We're at 50,000. And I believe they're dying at a rate of over 2,000 a day. So we're not done yet. Even when the virus is gone, as Fauci has explained, there's a lag with people continuing to die because new infections may stop, but the people that are sick are still going up on their own curve, if you will, progressing in the illness. The IHME model is right now predicting 67,000. And of course, that's updated as real-time data is added to it. For a super complex system, you're within 30, 40%, even 50%. I mean, that's not woefully inaccurate. That's not throw away the models. They're useless, especially when you couple that with Fauci and Birx's explanation of how we were going to beat that number. They never told the press that they were committing to that as a minimum number. Go back and watch my video. Fauci and Birx were not wrong. Watch that video. The story said 100,000 minimum. Fauci never said that. We went in full mitigation mode across the country. It turned out the status of the virus in most of the country, we were containing it. It wasn't spreading like it did in New York and Detroit and New Orleans. We successfully contained it in the rest of the country, and that's exactly what they said was going to drive that 100,000 number way, way down. That's what the science was telling us. That's what the plan was supposed to do. So you can't look back on it now and say the models were meaningless. Scientists were wrong because they did what they said they were going to do. My sense is that the coronavirus is not as bad as we thought it was. But I don't know. That's not science. That's just a sense. And part of that sense is the reality that now that we're here, it doesn't seem as bad as it was. But if you go back to where we were, the scientists were telling us that their plan was to make it this way, to make it so it wasn't as bad as it was. We need a good scientific postmortem to find out where we went wrong, where we underestimated, where we overestimated. It's going to take a lot of work. It's a complex system, but we need to learn more about the disease. That's the main thing here. Now, you can't dismiss their experience with people needing to be exposed and developing immunity that way, but it's still not understood that you would develop immunity to the coronavirus. And the problem still is, if it spreads too quickly, too many people need to go to the hospital and things shut down anyway. Workforces can't come into work, that sort of thing. You have to remember, the issue with the coronavirus is the speed of transmission. Even if it's similar or not even as bad as the flu in a lot of ways, illness-wise, it's the speed of transmission. And when you compare the actual numbers we're seeing now to flu, you're comparing a vaccination of a much lower percentage of the population versus mitigation that protects a much, much greater percentage of the population. I'm not a virologist. I'm not an immunologist. I'm just giving you a way to think about it. So I think some of that is missing here. What about quarantining the healthy? We're supposed to quarantine the sick, right? Again, the risk of this virus was the speed of transmission. No vaccination. We don't know who has the virus. If you wait until symptoms occur, 20% of the people will never have symptoms. So they're still going around spreading. So those are technically sick people that can infect other people. They don't even know it. So you can't quarantine them. Other people have very mild symptoms. Sure, you can tell them even the mildest symptoms stay home. But for everyone, they can be carriers for a week to 2 weeks. And I believe that's probably the single greatest factor in why this disease spreads so quickly. Because you see nothing. It's spreading, it's spreading, it's spreading. Then all of a sudden, whammo, you get this big spike in reported cases. Well, it's been spreading for so long. We're quarantining the healthy in lieu of a vaccine. That's essentially it. And because we don't know who's healthy. Now, you can argue we have testing now. We have all but again, that's already part of the plan to go back to work, which I'm not sure Dr. Erickson has seen either. You can go back and watch the April 16th press briefing, or you can watch my video on April 17th titled Historic Opening America Up Again, in my review of that press briefing in 15 minutes. Hopefully what I'm exhibiting for you is a logical way of thinking. When people tell you things, taking that information in an unbiased, objective way and trying to reconcile that to what other information. Unfortunately, too often what people do, and it's part of politics and it's partly lazy, is to pick the person. Fauci, he has questionable things I don't like, so I don't listen to anything he says. This doctor's an ER doctor, front lines, I'm going to listen to him. I'm sorry, but I don't think that's smart. That's not a good way because nobody's right all the time. Now, obviously, watch for inconsistencies in what they say. There's inconsistencies in what Dr. Erickson's saying. I have not seen any with Fauci and Birx. I have not. The press may be reporting it. If you listen to Birx and Fauci all the time, I don't see any inconsistencies. Okay, I recorded this video yesterday, and while I was editing it, I came across some new information, so I decided to do a really quick closing statement here. Let me read this statement to you. It's relative to the doctors in the California emergency room doctors. The American Academy of Emergency Medicine and the American College of Emergency Physicians jointly and emphatically condemn the recent opinions released by Dr. Daniel Erickson and Dr. Artin Masihi. These reckless and untested musings do not speak for medical society and are inconsistent with current science and epidemiology regarding COVID-19. As owners of local urgent care clinics, it appears these two individuals are releasing biased, non-peer-reviewed data to advance their personal financial interests without regard for the public's health. COVID-19 misinformation is widespread and dangerous. Members of the AAEM and ACEP are first-hand witnesses to the human toll that COVID-19 is taking on our communities. AAEM and ACEP strongly advise against using any statements of Drs. Erickson and Masihi as a basis for policy and decision-making. So that's pretty clear, pretty emphatic. That actually was sometime yesterday when they released it. Yeah, okay, I feel good. You know, I've kind of validated here. But my whole point in doing these videos, my whole point in sharing the thought process and things is I believe there's a lot of misinformation in the world. The media, you hear me talk about the media often. Experts. I tell you, beware of experts. Experts are the most equipped for deceiving you. If I'm expert in a field, the things that I know best, I guarantee you I can deceive you in those areas better than anyone. So we need to arm against that. And fact-checking, a lot of fact-checking is biased. You can't trust fact-checking either. So we all have to me, it's like managing spam in your mailbox, avoiding ransomware attacks. You have to learn to spot it. You can't just memorize all the potential ways because they're constantly coming up with new ways to scam you. So you have to develop this sort of smell test, this ability to recognize when things don't seem quite right. And that's what I always try to share. That's underlying all these videos that I've been doing. That's what I'm trying to bring. I'm not looking to be right. I'm not looking to have people feel like they need to come to me. I'm looking for, I feel like it's a skill or an ability that I have, and I want to share that with other people. So that's what I'm talking about. And so hopefully when you're listening to me, you're not just, well, I agree with them, I don't agree with them. You know, look for something of value for you. That would be my hope. That would be that would make me happy. That would satisfy me if people were getting something of value, whether they agreed with me or not. So I'll post a link to this in the description. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Like it if you like it. Please share and subscribe. I'll bring you more. Have a great day. God bless.